Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Paws for My Tail podcast. I am your host, Shepherd the Leopard, or Shep the Snep for short. I'm joined again with the fantastic TK Wolf.
Hello. Thanks again for having me.
And this is episode 4. The first couple of episodes, we went and we talked about your background growing up, your trip to Israel, high school, college, and then discovering the furry community, creating a fursona, your first con experience, and how that was a life-changing event. And so with that, I think right now we're kind of in your post-college years. You just started working for, I believe you said it was Zynga. And go from there. Tell us about, what was work like, and then any other fun little furry shenanigans you found yourself in.
Oh gosh. All right. So as far as work goes, work was, I had a place where I felt like I was growing. I was putting out good results. I was generally interested enough in the work, even though I wasn't interested in the product. But I found that, it was still games. It was close enough, at least for now. And it was a place where I was able to relate to people a bit more in the office. It was generally a younger crowd. It was generally a crowd that was a bit more, I'm just into games, period. Though you would be surprised, a lot of game companies have people who are just there because it's a job and they don't play games, even though maybe they like the idea or something. But either way, yeah, it was a pretty good environment. And on the side, I was just diving into the fandom full force. I think my first con was FC 2010, and I decided to go. Yeah, right.
14 years ago.
Oh, yeah, it is. Almost 15 now. But yeah, wait, it's been 15, right?
Close.
Yeah.
Depending on when it actually started. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I went to Anthrocon that year as well. And that was the year when, not the year, but by that second convention, after going there with a bit more of a game plan, going to panels, checking out the dance competition, going to a fursuit acting panel, I started to get really interested in the idea of having a fursuit. I was still iffy on it because there was still a lot of that kind of leftover, a little bit of stigma left over, just in not really knowing if I would like it, not knowing if maybe this was going too far overboard and I was just going to go off the cliff and, who knows where I'd end up.
So even after going to your first convention and hugging all of these suitors, seeing amazing fursuiters in their dance comps, and just having a generally overwhelming experience, you were still kind of like, but I don't know if this is for me. Or at least the fursuit angle.
Yeah, to an extent. Because I also wasn't sure if I would enjoy doing it, right? I'd never put one on. I didn't know physically if I might just feel claustrophobic, or if the heat might be too much, or if I put it on and I was just like, I'm not clicking with it. But I was curious for sure. And around that time, a friend of a friend let me try their fursuit on just to see. And I had a great time. I think I remember we went to some barbecue that was just outside in public.
Fun.
Yeah. It was a small little gathering. But I wore their fursuit. And I remember kids coming up to me and having a blast, and I was playing it off and just, hamming it up for them. And it became pretty clear to me that, yes, this is something that I will totally enjoy. I was very much jiving with actually kind of the mascot and performance aspect to it. And viewing it from that angle was just really exciting. So I got right into finding a fursuit maker and commissioning them. By MFF the same year, Midwest Fur Fest, in November, I had TK 1.0.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that was actually a pretty quick turnaround time then.
Very quick turnaround. I go 0 to 100. I am not very much a person who lies in the middle. Yeah, no, when I go in hard. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I was so happy to just have this physical form of TK, bringing him to life. And it is interesting because starting it right off the bat as character performance, I didn't quite realize it at the time, but it was making a little bit of a divide between TK as a true representation of myself versus TK as a performed character.
Mm-hmm.
Like I took it to the level of never take the head off anywhere, not even in the fursuit lounge. I was the guy who you would never see his face unless he was fully out of suit and you made the connection.
So you went from the person that the in-character suitor was the thing that you thought was so cringe that you did not want to that you didn't want to go to the con, to then going to full character mode when you got your fursuit. Have you ever thought of that at all, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. And there also was this side of me that also realized wow, this is a little bonkers. This is a really big shift. And with that also came this idea that if I'm at a point in life where I have this disposable income, that I have the ability to buy a fursuit, sure, it doesn't cost 5 figures like a lot of them may do today, but relatively enough for the time. I have this money to spare. I'm at a point in my life where I can do this, and I'm doing this thing that feels very outlandish to me. I also wanted to pair that with saying, well, you know what? Let me do this for a good cause. Let me tie this to trying to make an impact in a positive way in some way. And it was partially for, the reasons I just said of having all those extra resources. And part of it was also just because even within that 1 year, the fandom had already given me so much. I had received just a lot of support in general and such a wonderful feeling of community that I think I started this April of the following year. But I wanted to use it for charity work. And of course, one of the things that was really inspiring to me was that conventions all raise money for a charity. Every single con picks a charity, a really good cause that they want to support, and they drive focus to that. And how do you take something that is already so awesome and you make it even better? You're providing community, you're providing fun and excitement, and you're also helping a great cause. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just kind of try to embody that in my new journey into the land of 0 to 100 full furry mode.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that first convention in your fursuit? When you put on the fursuit and you went out to everybody that was out there, was it just instantly that character came to you? Had you prepared anything for it? What was early TK like, and how did that just kind of happen?
So early TK, I mean, aside from me being really happy and having fun with it, early TK was a little boring. I was figuring it out. I was feeling it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely didn't have it down at first. It took a while. It took, I would say, probably a year before I was starting to actually get into it. Because I also didn't really suit much outside of conventions starting out. Maybe a few occasional events.
Mm-hmm.
But I ultimately didn't suit that much. I was very much cool, it's a FurCon. I'm in furry mode. FurCon's over, back into work mode. Or regular life mode.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely a process of just figuring out how I wanted to play things off. Eventually I started leaning into the cute good boy puppy aspect, and just make little my paws up and do cute little goofy things, get the tail wag going. I didn't have to be fully silent because I just made cute wolf noises. And I had so much fun leaning into the cute side of it and just being a little goober. There was one year at Further Confusion where I just brought a big cardboard box with me, and I wrote "free puppy" on it. And I just sat in the box and just had my paws on the edge of the box and just poking my muzz over the top and just being a freaking dingus. It was great. It was great. It was a lot of fun. And it was kind of just like an interesting, I don't know if I'd say I saw it as a challenge. I think I just saw it as a cool way to express the character. And I kind of also, that was just what I was exposed to as the way to fursuit, the way to fursuit well. And there were also some really, really like wonderful inspirational examples in the community of like really passionate fursuiters. Like Croc and Yippee Coyote were two people who I really, really looked up to. Red was a guy who I really, really looked up to. All these people who were like the veteran fursuiters of the fandom. I mean, there were many more. It obviously wasn't just them, but from my view, these were like, oh man, these people are amazing at what they do. They bring their characters really to life. And I kind of wanted to follow in their footsteps doing that.
Mm-hmm. So what would early TK sound like? Can you give us like an example of like your voice, your inflection, your mannerisms, maybe something you would say as somebody came up to you?
This is hard to do if I'm not actually in a fursuit. It's so hard to do if I'm not in a fursuit. Hold on, wait. Can I form shift?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna do a few tries and then because I haven't done this.
I put you on the spot, so
yeah, you put me right on the spot. What the heck? What the heck? If I could gurr at you, I would gurr at you, but I have no facial expressions right now. I kind of remember my voice was a little bit like this when I started talking because I had a little bit of like the high little squeaky voice, so I could just be like, "Hi, I'm TK. Hello, good to meet you." It's a little woofer.
So if I came up to you and be like, "Can I get a hug?"
I'd be like, "Oh, yes, you can get a hug. Give me a hug." Not that much, but no. But I'd probably be like, "Arf." Be like, give hugs.
Yee. Do you have any experiences before we kind of move on to, more modern TK or like any fun con stories from your early days in the fandom that really stand out to you, I guess?
Oh yeah, tons. So early on, like, let's see. I mean, one thing is just dance in general and fursuit dance. Obviously, that was something that was really inspirational for me when I saw that first fursuit dance comp. And we have like this background of dance adjacent, playing Dance Dance Revolution, which is at least moving to rhythm. You're halfway there. And a few experiences in life where I would actually dance on a dance floor. When I finally got over the initial hurdle of self-restraint and shyness, I would let loose, and it felt amazing every single time. So there was definitely something there about that openness of an expression. And there were a few furs in the fandom who hosted some dance related panels at FurCons. One is JD Puppy, who ran like I think it was a intro to fursuit dancing. And he went over some really basic things. Some movements you can do to 4-count beats, right? Things that you could apply to any dance. And it's funny because so JD had this routine of several different motions, and it was light, it was a little campy. And later on in that convention, I see JD Puppy, and I'm like, JD, look. And I do the things, I do the sequence. And JD told me afterwards, he's like, I wasn't sure if you were making fun of me because I felt a little bit embarrassed about how campy a lot of those dances were. So when I see you doing them all back in front of me, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. So we had a good laugh about that. Also, Quick hosted a Thriller dance panel, like Michael Jackson's Thriller. The whole thing, beginning to end, it's actually like a 5-minute song or something. And the intro part before the chorus that everyone is familiar with is, or the lead up to the chorus that everyone is familiar with, I think is like 2 minutes long or something ridiculous. But we learned the whole thing beginning to end. And then everyone, danced it and filmed a video, I think. And I had such a blast just doing this, getting this feeling of performance.
All fun.
Yeah, no, it was great. I brought that knowledge back, and I got a few friends, and we did a Fursuit dance video 2 thriller with what we learned and what we could do with it. And I started getting more involved. I started trying to put some choreographies together. I struggled with it a bit because I have a pretty decent knack for picking up choreography that someone else has made. In terms of coming up with movements myself, I don't have any like traditional dance foundation, which makes it really difficult to just come up with stuff, because what pool of knowledge do you draw from for that?
DDR.
DDR, that would go great on a stage. I am your little butterfly. But I actually, I think at the time I got some help from a friend that I had made, Atsu Fox, who's a brilliant choreographer, a fantastic dancer, who kind of like worked with me. I think he made a lot of the choreography for my first routine. I think, if I remember correctly, I added a little bit of twists of my own, but for the most part, it was his help that made that routine come together. And I performed it on stage, and it was great. I felt amazing. Like actually just being able to do that, and more so as it kept going. The feeling of, especially once I started making my own choreography from the bottom up, I easily take 4 to 5 times as long as most other people would, because I am missing that traditional background. But I put a lot of energy into putting emotion into it, trying to really express something more than just moving in a way that looks appealing. And when you put months and months of work and effort and practice into something, and you're backstage, you're getting ready, and it's all for 2 minutes on a stage, and you get there and you have these bright lights shining at you, and there's a huge crowd of people all looking at you. I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking, but B, just magical when you start going and the audience is feeling it and resonating with it. I mean, to be honest, okay, in the moment, once I start going, the audience doesn't exist. I don't see them. I don't hear them. I'm not capable of it. I'm so in the moment of trying to get everything right and just go with it. But still, there are some times when like you hear them cheer and it breaks through, and it's so encouraging. and at the end, just being like, oh my God, I did that. I made that happen. It's such an amazing feeling. Oh
yeah, dance comps are amazing. So if you ever have a chance to go to a furry convention and you are looking for something, if it's your first furry convention, especially like the dance competitions, just out of this world. They're so fun to watch. It sounds like you had a lot of experience early on in those dance comps. How well did you do in them? Did you ever place in any of them, or was it mostly just something that you really enjoyed?
There was one time when I got 3rd place for a solo act.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there were a couple of group routines that I did actually over the years, and those actually had a lot more placements. I got a couple times to do a routine with JD, which was freaking amazing, because this is one of the guys who was like one of my inspirations in the fandom, doing a routine with me. And he's I mean, also an amazing instructor. He loves just helping elevate people and teaching people. And then I could go on about him. I won't, but shout out to JD. You're great. But being able to be on stage with him was amazing. I got to do a dance with Keat Fox, which was so cool. We did that at Megaplex one year, and I kind of had the idea for a dance, but it didn't come together. I wasn't going to enter the dance comp. At the convention, I believe Keat came up to me and said, because we'd at least been talking about it to some capacity. I believe Keat came up to me at the convention and said, "Hey, let's do it. Let's just do it. Let's make it happen." And we spent half of the con or more just figuring out the choreo, making it up, like making it work. And we, we had parts that were really stressful because we were rushing the memorization of that. And it's terrifying when you don't feel confident in your memory of a routine, because if you get off, recovering is so difficult because the music doesn't stop, and you have to not only remember where you were supposed to be, but how to jump back in. But yeah, we did this really cute K-pop song. It was called like Candy Smile. We bought a bag of Hershey Kisses in advance, and like tore a little hole in them. So for part of it, we like had the Hershey Kiss and we're like shaking it out at people. And yeah, then I tossed my bag back into the crowd. Apparently I hit someone in the face with it. But they were
hitting people in the crowd with your bag.
TK violent. No, they were fine. It was a light toss. They laughed about it. But yeah, someone came after and was like, "You hit me in the face with like Hershey Kisses." I was like, "Oh no, dude." But we placed with that routine as well.
Oh, nice. So I have some insider information on people that do dance comps, and that does not sound like an atypical situation for a lot of these dancers for furry conventions, where they will all meet up, because it's hard when everybody lives so far away. That lots of times, the only time you have to practice for your dance competition is during the convention. And so that becomes the convention for a lot of these fur dancers, where they all get together, they practice their dance competition routine like during the con.
Yeah.
And that's got to be so stressful, but also exhilarating to put that on.
Yeah, I mean, usually you're preparing ahead of time, and then in con is when you get to iron out the details, when you're also, you have your personal choreography of your emotions, and then you have, as a group, where your positions relative to each other, how do you move around each other, all these things that really need to be honed in, unless you can design a choreography around that, which, makes it easier, makes it a little more loose. But the more complicated you get, obviously, the more intricate the more tightly coordinated you have to be. Of course, I can't talk about dance without talking about For Real, which was, it was Diggy, it was Doryu, it was Apollo, and it was me. The three of them had actually started out as For Real on their own. And I remember there was one point where I was like, guys, I'd really like to join you guys. And I wholeheartedly agree with what they said at the time, which was not right now. Cause like I was relatively new, they had their vibe going. And it didn't actually make sense at the time. But like I kept pushing, I kept doing more stuff on my own. And at some point later on, they said, "Hey, TK, do you still want to join For Real?" And I was like, "Yes, oh my God, yes, I want to join For Real. Of course I want to join." And I think that was our first group routine, was the first time that at least me and maybe some of the others there got first place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was at MFF, I don't know, 2014 or something. And we did a couple choreographies after that as well. And it was amazing. We placed both times. I think we got a first and a second. I don't remember exactly, but it was an absolutely amazing experience to dance with three talented, passionate friends. And it was an amazing time in our lives.
So besides the fursuit dancing, you have this new fursuit. You've entered some dance competitions along with going to different conventions. It sounds like you've been having a really great time. Are you still working at Zynga throughout all of this?
I think I was still working at Zynga for a lot of that, but the last 3 years there had definitely been more tumultuous. We went from a private company to a public company, and that came with a lot of pressure to make more money. Because as we all know, stonk go up. If stonk go down, company bad. Like stock market mentality is very like unga bunga, number go up. Yeah, like layoffs started happening. I think in a period of 3 years, there were 5 rounds of layoffs that were like 15% of the company or more. So I had experiences where there was a day where I mean, the first time they did it was very poorly executed because they sent out a company-wide email saying, hey, there are going to be layoffs and your manager will call you into their office to let you know. And we spent the whole day watching people one by one get called into an office and then get walked out. It was agonizing. There were tears. There was so much anxiety, just having to say goodbye to people one at a time, not knowing if you're next. The others were handled better, but it didn't change the fact that it was becoming a pattern where every 6 months, almost 20% of the people you knew would just be gone.
Yeah.
Not great. I think by that time I had moved from Farmville 1 to Farmville 2. I was doing some cool initiatives with like working on tooling and technology to make the process more efficient and coordinating with artists to make their lives better. Mm-hmm. It was a very fulfilling position because I was directly helping people on my team and making their lives better. But eventually it did reach a point where my team basically got dismantled because there wasn't enough value from it, and the people we were serving got partially axed. Part of our team got axed. So they said, all right, well, what they told to me and the others on my team that were still there was, you're not fired. You're still part of the company, and go find a team in the company to join.
Oh, wow.
Like we'll connect you with some people, but just find another team and we'll find something for you somewhere. And I got stuck on the casino team, which I hate gambling, both from the perspective of someone who I'm going to sound like I don't want to sound like a jerk saying this, but like, I get statistics. There's no way for me to gamble my money when it is statistically against me. I just don't. And the draw of, ooh, but what if more is not compelling for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe if there was a fun game involved, maybe there was some skill aspect, even if it was skewed against me. But at its core, I don't like the idea of gambling, nor working on a product that is designed to so aggressively extract money from people who are vulnerable to that.
Yeah.
The team wasn't passionate. They didn't give a squat. They basically said, I don't know, go find bugs or whatever, play the game and find bugs. So I'm like, I think this is my time to go. So I did. I jumped ship to another mobile game company. And also what I was realizing was that working on mobile games does kind of trap you in a bubble, where other companies will say, oh, but that's not like games. That's like mobile games.
Yeah, they kind of see them as lesser, I guess, because you're not doing the AAA amazing type games.
Yeah, part of it is just we see this as a totally different skill set, and there are differences for sure, lots of them. And part of it is like, well, yeah, no, but that's not real games. You're just your baby games. You're the easy money games. There's some truth to it. But I found another mobile game company. They made great promises of caring about creativity and innovation, and they turned out to be a company that strictly rips off other games and makes basically clones with their own coat of paint.
Yep.
And it was a content treadmill. It was, cost all of your tasks down to the hour. Hey, why was this off by 2 hours? Let's have a meeting about that. Like level of like micromanaging. I mean, yeah, just it was not good. Not good, I would say. Actually, let's scrap the fake accent. People don't understand the context of that.
We'll keep that in.
It was
not good.
It was not good. Not good. But yeah, not fun.
We've offended all people in Europe.
I don't know what accent that is. It's the voice. It's the voice. Anyway. But yeah, so that didn't last long. That lasted 1 year. And I pieced out of there kind of without really a plan. Mm-hmm. But I knew that A, I felt trapped in a mobile bubble. B, I felt like my skills weren't really up to par to get into those better companies and to get into into a proper game company. And see, I don't know what C was. I needed to get out. I needed a change. And I'd done this once before, so it wasn't as scary. But I didn't even have like a side company or a little startup or anything to join. I just said, I'm going to take time, one, because I'm burnt out. Like the burnout was really hard between Zynga turning into a trash heap, between the company just being immensely soul sucking from pretty early on. I actually passed up a yearly bonus by 1 month because,
wow.
well, it was the thing where I had been there long enough to earn the bonus, but you have to be a member of the company by the time they pay it out, which was like 3 months later.
Oh, and you just, you were done by that point.
Yeah, I was ready to stay until that 1 year mark. And then when I found out that I still wouldn't get the bonus, I was just like, I can't do it. And I had enough savings that it wasn't like scary. It wasn't stupid. It probably would have been smarter. Money on the table and you're about to go jobless, right? Like it would have been smarter. I probably should have taken it, but I didn't. I got out there.
That's a difficult thing to look back on because when you're there in the moment and you're going through the stress of I'm working on casino games and I really don't like this. Mental health is important. And so it sounds like even though you forewent a bonus, it probably was beneficial to your mental health to take that leap at that time, just because burnout's real. Burnout is just awful. Like, and I'm sure most people understand that. Most people have experienced that, especially in this modern day, our age, that burnout happens. And when it does, like, that's something you got to take care of because it's not going to go away.
It is. Yeah. And, I was very fortunate to be in a position where I had enough savings that I could do that without really putting myself at risk. If push came to shove, if I were to look at my finances and say, I have 3 months of rent saved up, I would have stayed for the bonus, because that would be I could become homeless from something like that. That could be a life destroying decision.
Yeah. And you'd be causing yourself more stress, with that, the financial stress, the emotional and worry of running out of finances had that been your situation. But it sounds like you were fortunate where you were good with money. You had saved a lot of it from the job you were working where you kind of had this flexibility to get yourself out of that situation.
Yes. I mean, Fursuit aside, I was still very conservative with my finances and savings. Because I also had that background of like, ooh, things were tight. So I lived very frugally with some exceptions. Like Farcons and Fursuits. Whoops. But yeah, my only plan was try to make some games by myself, little demo projects, and just study a lot and try to get into a good company. That didn't index controllers. A good company. You know what I mean. But yeah, I spent, I don't know, I think like 9 months, maybe even a year, just doing this sort of like independent study-ish thing. I very quickly realized trying to make your own games without an artist, without a UI designer, without a musician, kind of tough. I'm going to be honest. It's tough. So I made a couple demos. I got a little bit of creative energy out and very quickly realized like, okay, this isn't actually going to go anywhere. So that shifted into just study mode. I just grinded out a bunch of programming problems. I did research. I did some practice projects. And frankly, I wasn't in a very good, I wasn't in a great place at that point in my life. It wasn't horrible. I've been in much worse. Overall, happy for my health and where I was, but it was definitely rough times because you lose that feeling of a actual job security. You lose that feeling of being productive. You lose any sort of validation, saying that yes, you're doing a good job. No one can say that. I'm my own boss, and my own boss pays me $0 and just tells me to keep studying, and there is no end goal.
Yep. I think that there's something to having some kind of either like work or some project that you feel like is kind of growing or getting towards that realm of work and productivity when it comes to mental health? It just, and I don't know what it is, because, you know, work can be a source of stress and, you know, causing depression or bad mental health, as you experienced with Zynga, but it can also, on that double-edged sword, be a source of, you know, accomplishment, of fulfillment that really drives better mental health outcomes. And so it sounds like you were kind of discovering that, how it's like, oh, I need work, but at the same time, I need work that fits me.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I'll also take a moment to say that, like, this is a pretty privileged problem to have.
Yeah.
You know, just to put that out there, because sometimes some people don't have that fortunate position to be able to not have to grit their teeth through an awful job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still wanted to chase my happiness. And yeah, I've experienced both sides of it too, right? Because I had plenty of moments where I was really happy with my job and where I did feel really fulfilled and like I felt like I was getting somewhere. I mean, also, actually, interesting note that I was kind of over promoted at Zynga. I reached senior software engineer pretty early. And I think they had a lower bar of what counted as senior to them. And part of it was just a means of progression through the company, a means of, you know, acknowledgement of hard work, and all that. But it caused a problem for me because all of a sudden getting hired as a senior engineer became really tough because at the better companies, their standards are much higher. And I was feeling that. I was feeling like, oh shit, now I'm struggling to look like a competent senior engineer, right? Like I've done such a good job excelling that I've excelled past where I actually am. You know, and that's also part of why I was busting my butt studying to try to fill that gap and to catch up there. There were quite a few places where I applied to where they would say, oh, well, I mean, if we had a position for, you know, for the, whatever the name is for senior -1, they say, oh, well, you know, we would love to hire you, but we only have senior positions and sorry, you're just not there. And there was a lot of that. But I did eventually manage to land, well, I almost landed a job at Microsoft and then I did land a job at Microsoft. I applied for their HoloLens division, which was like augmented reality, a really cool system that they were working on. And it was, again, a similar position where they said, you're not really at a senior level, but we really like you and we're going to try to get a position made for you. And in the process of that, they got reorged. And my contact just basically vanished. And I found out 2 months later that they were like, oh, yeah, I think that guy tried to, and because of the reorg, they couldn't. So sorry. I reapplied elsewhere at Microsoft and eventually did get a position. And lo and behold, it was in the same soul-sucking class of work that my first job was, which was data systems. File systems.
Is that why you think you got that position, though? Is because you had prior experience in it?
It is. It's what got my, and I knew this, right? It was my foot in the door into a you know, a very good recognizable company. But it went about as rough as you might expect. I was sufficient. I was fine. But it was just a lot of the same patterns of feeling like I'm busting my butt and working ridiculously hard to be a bit below the bar, but not low enough to be fired or, you know, get pulled in for a performance improvement plan kind of thing. Just being middling below the bar, you're fine, while busting my butt to try to even maintain that.
Zynga is located in California, if I'm correct.
Yes. Yep.
And Microsoft's headquarters was this job in Seattle, Washington? Like, was there a move that had to happen because of that?
I forgot about that part. I moved to Seattle for Microsoft. That was a thing. That was a thing. Yes, that was also part of it.
What was that like for you, though? Because it sounds like you had started to form a lot of friends in the California area. You talked about some of the things that you did with the local furry group there in California. That must have been somewhat of a difficult decision to uproot from all of that to a whole another location.
Yeah. So, I mean, by then, I think I was in California for, oh my gosh. I know that I was in California for almost 15 years, but somehow the numbers don't add up when I look back at it. How does that work? It was 3 at the first place, 1 year taking off, doing the side venue or the side venture, then 6 years at Zynga, then 1 year at the other company, then 1 year study. Yeah, I'd been there for almost 15 years at that point. And it was really, really hard to leave because I loved the Bay Area. I had great friends. I loved the feeling of when I would walk downtown and how just the atmosphere there. I loved the nature that was around me. But things were also shifting. Like rent was getting absolutely insane, off the charts. At least relative to what I was used to. One of the things that was just the absolute kicker for me was I was renting a house, a 4-bedroom house with a total of 5 people in the house. I had a 10 by 10 foot bedroom to myself where all of my stuff had to be crammed in. The public spaces were crammed. There was very little personal space. I was still paying, I think, like $1,000 a month at the time, plus utilities. And that was considered a good deal at the time. Meanwhile, the house across the street, which was basically a shack, like 1,600, maybe 1,800 square feet, in need of significant repairs, like 5 figures worth of repairs, well into 5 figures. It was sold for $1.6 million.
Wow.
And I looked at that and I just said, there's no way in the world, even with tech money, there's no way in the world I can keep up with this. The price of housing is going up faster than someone with one of the most fortunate career paths is able to keep up with. And I was getting relatively poorer just compared to the cost of rent, compared to the cost of a home. And I was just like, I can't. This place is not a sustainable place to live in. Maybe if I was making, business money, if I was making lead engineer money, maybe I could do that. But no, not a chance.
So did you ever pause to think about, maybe some of your housemates weren't in tech, or maybe some of the friends you had in the area weren't in tech, that were just working, typical jobs. But if you were coming to that conclusion, like, it just sounds like not a good place to be for anyone.
Yeah. I mean, it was extremely common among my friend circles and extended friend circles that people would be living with a number of beds plus 1 or 2, that many people in a house, just kind of cramming together to have a somewhat reasonable living expenses. And when you live with housemates for 15 years straight, you start to go a little bit crazy. Just a little bit, packing your life into a cube and not having any real privacy. It felt like it wasn't worth it. And I was not the first of the great furry migration from the Bay Area to Seattle. There were a lot of people doing that. So I had some really good friends that had already moved, so that was also some motivation. And I was trying to convince some of my friends to move up with me as well. In fact, I did move with some of my friends.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Before we get to the move to Seattle, is there any particular memories you recall from California with some furry friends there? Any fun, just like moments that you'll cherish or remember before we move on to the Seattle area?
So, gosh, I mean, there were honestly more great times and memories that I could even recount here. And my brain does the thing when a question is so big, it also goes blank at the same time. But a lot of my best memories were experiences with friends at cons, and also even like some of the extra life stuff that we did, which was really huge, which I guess I didn't really get into the details of that because we discussed that I used my Fursuit for charity. But we kind of left that on the table for now. So maybe I can go into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just for some context on this, the charity idea that I started was called Furs for Life. And it originally started out by just making videos. I made a pledge and I put this video out on YouTube, which, by the way, it was in 480p because that was fine at the time. And our cameras sucked back then by default. But I put this video on YouTube, in Fursuit, just kind of explaining the idea behind it, saying, hey, I want to make fun content, and as long as people keep donating to this charity, I will keep making videos. At the time, it was for the Red Cross, because I was trying to find a charity that was just as broad-reaching as possible, where anyone might find themselves in a situation where this charity could help them. So, if disaster hits your area, the Red Cross is one of the places that will help. So I pushed really hard for that. And the video was very well received. Again, just the furry fandom is amazing when it comes to supporting others, when it comes to supporting good causes. So I started making videos, and looking back, they were probably kind of cringe. But I did them. People kept responding by continuing to donate, and I just kept making videos. Like, it never reached a point where it fizzled out and it stopped. So, I was ecstatic. I was floored. I started getting some more friends involved locally. And in fact, I think that happened around the time when I heard about Extra Life. And Extra Life is the cause I've been sort of championing for the last decade plus, where it's a gaming charity weekend where you raise funds and awareness for Children's Miracle Network hospitals, which are a fantastic network of hospitals across the U.S. that help kids in need when their families may otherwise not be able to afford care or not be able to get care that is suited to kids in a pretty traumatic and awful time in their lives. Mm-hmm. They do everything from finding really cost-effective means of giving the kids a sense of play, whether it's decorating the space, whether it's having little toys and games for them to play, and having people come in to visit them. And of course, obviously, the medical side, including research, including treatment. And I loved that idea. I loved that cause. And after the first, I think 1 or 2 years, I started getting some friends involved. And they also were showing the initiative to get involved. I remember there was one year when I had the idea of, okay, what if we all run streams from the same room? And we were in our cramped living room, with 5 of us running simultaneous streams, with audio bleeding over, with having to repeat things because we might not have heard each other. It still worked overall. People who came to watch were happy with it, and we had a blast. Mm-hmm. But that's when it also started kickstarting this idea of, hey, let's just host a stream together. We're all going to do this thing. We're all going to be on a schedule together. We're all going to boost it. We're going to funnel it through one place. So instead of TK's page, it was First for Life, the page on Extra Life. And yeah, it was fantastic. We just invited our close friends, people who had experience on stage or with performance. We had Fursuit shenanigans. We made a bunch of dares and prizes. I don't know if I should go too deep in all of the Extra Life details. But it did lead to some really, really amazing times and just this feeling of togetherness, of accomplishing this important goal together. There were so many amazing people that I wanted to connect with. And that, in conjunction with becoming, being on Twitter, being more involved with social media, being involved with online forums of the fandom, did reach a point where I started getting really spread thin. And I had this one moment when this was around the time when I had, I'd quit I'd quit the job at that really not great mobile company, and was just kind of on my own trying to do better.
Mm-hmm.
I was in bed. I'd been on Twitter for 2 hours straight.
Ooh, doom
and
scrolling.
No, not doom scrolling. Actually, that was honestly, I will say, in the good days of Twitter when people were more focused on just sharing fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At least from my view, from the people who I followed, everyone's experience is totally different. But I had made it a real habit of mine to try to respond to literally anyone who ever made a comment towards me, like on Fur Affinity, on social media, on YouTube. Because having received so much kindness and support, I always wanted to at least acknowledge when people took the time and energy to say something to me. And I remember there was this one night when I was on Twitter again for 2 hours straight, just trying to catch up and trying to respond to things. And I hit this point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I woke up and I spent 2 hours on my phone. I'm going to bed. I spent 2 hours on my phone. I'm stretching myself thinner and thinner by constantly reaching out more and constantly trying to maintain everything. And I had this realization that, like, shit, I have to, if I can't respond to everything, I need to either respond to nothing or start making conscious decisions of like who's worth my time to respond to, which is not how I actually view it. But like at some point you have to say, okay, whatever, I don't need to respond to this.
Mm-hmm.
Which is this really shitty feeling, right? Because I don't want to evaluate people. I don't want to think of anything as not worth it. But it was, it was a very difficult reminder and life lesson that, like, when push comes to shove, I'm going to have to focus on the friends who I've had shared experiences with, the people I've formed memories with at conventions or in person, and try to be a better friend to them rather than be someone who's just spread thin at all times and never really present, never really giving people proper time and attention as a friend should. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a valuable lesson to learn for not just yourself, but like everybody to an extent. Like it does feel bad to not be able to give everyone the attention that you would love to give them. But at the end of the day, you only have so much time yourself and so much energy that you can actually give, where you need to make those conscious decisions about where those priorities need to go. And that's not a bad thing. That's just a thing that's healthy that you need to do. Otherwise you run out and then you can't give anything at that point. So
for sure. Yeah. But yeah, there was, and all those came to be because as I would go to more cons, I would just run into awesome people all the time. Like I would maybe run into someone and say, "Oh my God, I love your fursuit." But then we would start chatting about stuff and we find out, oh, we have a game that we have in common and we really like yapping about it. Or we talk about our fursuiting experiences. Oh gosh. I remember there were many cons where one of the coolest experiences was just staying up really late. Not because you just don't feel like going to bed, but because the nighttime bonding experiences sort of shifted from this really chaotic con environment, a good kind of chaos, where there's people everywhere and it's hi bye left and right, to it's 2 a.m. and I spot this person walking down the hall who I think is awesome, and I strike up a conversation with them and we hang out and we go get dinner at some weird sketchy, like 24-hour store or whatever. Oh man, time's just being idiots, being idiots and loving it. I wish I had more like specific concrete things to say though.
No, but so what I'm gathering from that though is some of your most favorite moments are not necessarily the big, like amazing times, but sometimes it's just a time with a friend to be an idiot, or a little late night pal time where you can just chat and have fun with somebody that you really care about. Like it sounds like even though like those aren't necessarily big moments, those are probably some of the more precious moments for you, and you've had a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're an opportunity to bond in a different way. And in many times there were chances to like just kind of open your heart to someone.
Mhm.
Like especially in the fandom, especially earlier on, a lot of us were, heart in our sleeve, bleeding heart type. I think that's the right expression. But I remember there were times when, there was a friend who I really, someone who wasn't yet a friend, who I really, really admired. I'd seen the hard work that they did in videos that they made or a dance that they put on stage. And I got that opportunity to talk with them and just be like, hey, you're so freaking cool, because all of these things that I've seen you do and how I see the heart and the passion and the energy that you put in that. And I feel that and I feel you. And sometimes they'd be like, I see the things you've done. And I'm like, what? Shut up. Stop it. I'm saying things about you. But I mean, either way, whether or not, I've had both sides. But it's just been really awesome bonding experiences. Yeah. And I've made friendships that have just persisted over the years, where the draw of a FurCon became less about what's going to happen, what am I going to see? And yeah, that's still exciting. And more, holy crap, I can keep up with these friends who I don't have the time to really keep up with all that much online. We can exchange a few words, we can exchange a bit here and there, but we seek each other out at a con and spend time with each other. And it's such an amazing way of keeping in touch.
Yee. Well, I think with that, that's an excellent place to put a cap to this episode. I think next episode we can talk about your transition over to Seattle, some of the things that you learned there, some of the different projects and other kind of life lessons you've learned through that process of moving and then also being in the Seattle area. And then we'll also focus more on your charity work. I think there's a lot of fun stories to be told with Furs for Life and what you have accomplished there and what you continually want to continue to accomplish there. So,
well, that sounds great.
Yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and call this episode concluded. Thanks everybody for watching. You're all amazing. If you liked what you watch, again, we'll remind you to hit the like and or subscribe button. Follow us on our socials. We're on Blue Sky and Mastodon. We're also on Spotify. And so we appreciate you being here. Stay tuned. We'll have one more episode with this fantastic wolf, TK, and we'll see you all then. Thanks.